Hello, my name is Abeer Eladany, and I'm a curatorial assistant at the University of Aberdeen, Museums and Special Collections. Today I'm going to be talking about museum collections rediscovered from Egypt to Aberdeen. Before I start, I would like to thank the Current Research and Archaeology conference organizers for inviting me to talk today. I'm going to first start with the painting on the left, and this is Marshall College Quadrangle in Aberdeen, painted in 1861 by James Giles. And the picture on the right is a picture of the box that I'm going to be discussing today. Our collection, just to give you an overview, this is our collection that is housed in different locations across campus, but our human culture collection is housed in Collection Center in Marshall College, and this is the picture on the top right. We're going to be starting our journey today from the pyramids. And these are some photos of the pyramids and sketches that were done around 1860 and 1870 sort of time. So in 1865, the Royal Astronomer for Scotland, Charles Piazzi Smyth, and his wife Jessie, who was a geologist, they completed a sort of the first almost accurate survey of the Great Pyramid of Giza. They took thousands of detailed measurements and first photographs of the pyramid's internal structures. They used a magnesium wire to support photography inside the dark burial chambers. The reason for this survey was that Smythe was frustrated that other earlier surveys of the pyramid were inaccurate, so he decided to conduct his own survey and take accurate measurements and photographs. He aimed to use these measurements to test and prove the theories that were presented earlier by John Taylor, the author of the book The Great Pyramid: Why Was It Built and Who Built It? That was published in 1859. Smythe was influenced by evangelical Christianity, believed in the existence of a pyramid inch. Influenced by this sort of ideas, the pyramid inch is a unit of measurement handed down by God. These ideas fueled a more political debate about the British imperial system and the French metric system. Taylor's theories that the pyramid was built to make a record of the measure of the earth, and that the ancient Egyptians, knew the value of pi, were ultimately disproved. However, the books and the lectures and the publications of Smythe inspired many to begin research in Egypt, including Flinders Petrie himself, who is the famous archaeologist, of course. And this is what the Glasgow Herald reported about the survey of the pyramid. Piazzi planned to do a further survey of the pyramid. However, his ill health didn't really allow him to do that. So he asked his friend Winman Dixon and Dr. Graham Bay to help him doing this survey. Grant was a physician in Egypt at the time. He was the physician of the Khidewi, the ruler of Egypt, and he was also well known in the Egyptological circles in Cairo. And Dixon was a structural engineer who was building or assisting in the building of bridge over the Nile in Cairo. So Dixon and Grant went to the Great Pyramid to do this survey in 1872. And we have a detailed account of what happened in the Queen's chamber and their discovery that was told by Smythe in his book Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid. And Smythe is telling us that apparently there was a crack on the southern wall in the Queen's chamber, and Graham Bay noticed this crack, and then he started to investigate what's behind and using a wire. And then it was clear that there is a void behind, and they started taking this thin section of stone out to discover an air shaft, which is similar to the air shaft that was already in air shafts that were discovered in the king chamber beforehand. Based on this knowledge and based on the knowing that ancient Egyptians like symmetry, they measured the distance from the wall to the air shaft, and they replicate the same on the north wall. And of course, they found the north air shaft on the north wall as well. Three objects were discovered in one of the shafts, a stone bowl, a metal hook, which is about 5 centimeters long, and a piece of cedar, which was recorded or published by the Graphic in December 1872. Wayman Dixon took the bowl and the metal hook, while Dr. Grant took the wooden piece. The hook and the bowl were donated to the British Museum by one of Dixon's descendants in 1972. On the online database for the British Museum, we will see here that the wooden piece was described as a small wood board. In Our Inheritance in the Great Pyramid, which was published in 1874 by Piazzi Smythe, he published an illustration of the internal structure of the Great Pyramid, and we can see here that he illustrated the shafts from the king's chamber, these two, and also he illustrated the shafts from the Queen's chamber, and there is one here and one here. However, it wasn't clear how far they go inside the Great Pyramid. Smythe also tells us about what actually took place regarding investigating these air shafts or channels. He mentioned a fire that was made inside the tubes or the channels, but although the southern one, the smoke went away, its exit was not discoverable on the outside of the pyramid. So it was clear that these shafts are blocked from the inside and also blocked from the outside. So whatever is discovered within these shafts actually dates back to the building of the pyramid. Smythe also mentioned here the cedar-like wood that was discovered within one of the channels. Graham Bay and Wyman Dixon took accurate measurements of the chambers inside the pyramid, and Dixon drew a sketch or a diagram of the Great Pyramid, and you can see here this is a copy that we have in special collections in Aberdeen, which is signed by Wyman Dixon in Cairo, and you can also see the date is 1873. So the air shafts in the Queen's Chamber were described as the most enigmatic feature in the Great Pyramid, and they really interested a lot of the archaeologists throughout the years. And we see here in 1928, Morton Edgar explored the shafts using joint rods, and some of his rods actually stayed in one of the shafts until they were later on discovered during another exploration in the Queen's Chamber. In 1993, a robot was used to explore the south and the north air shafts in the Queen's Chamber, and this robot was called Wawit, which is ancient Egyptian for the opener of the ways. which is a very suitable name for a robot that is exploring the shafts in the pyramid. The northern shaft turned sharply to the west after approximately 27 feet, and the robot could not go any further. And in the south shaft stopped after 208 feet by a door or a small slab with two copper handles or pins that blocked the entire shaft. Um, Later on in 2002, and these photos belong to this examination, and it was another robot is called the Pyramid Rover. This robot was used during an examination of the shafts that was broadcasted live, and millions and billions of people watched during this examination of the shafts. And we can see here the north air shaft with a blocking stone and two pins or two handles, which was also the same case as the south shaft with a blocking stone and two metal pins. And this is from the live broadcast when the Pyramid Rover drilled a small hole in the blocking stone or the so-called door to discover that there is a void beyond this door. And this is the Pyramid Rover again here to the left, and to the right we have this is another robot that was actually developed in Leeds, and in 2011 GD, the robot also used to examine the shafts. The outcome of these examinations using different robots there are two blocking slabs with copper pins at about the same distance from the Queen's chamber, about 65 meters in both the northern and southern shafts. However, there are so many unanswered questions, and during the last examination, which was in 2011, they used a camera at the end of the robot, and the camera went through the hole was drilled beforehand, and it managed to take some pictures from the inside, which showed some markers and probably workman marks on some of the stone. So it's really interesting. I would like to talk a bit about Dr. James Grant Bay, who was a physician and Egyptologist, and his connections to Aberdeen. So he was born in 1840 in Metlick in Aberdeenshire, and he studied art and medicine at the university and graduated in 1864. In 1866, he responded to a call from Dr. Ogilvy of Alexandria, and this was to come and work in Egypt and help to treat cholera patients, which was something that clearly interested Dr. Grant, and he went there and he later on became an expert in treating cholera. Uh, at the end of his work in Alexandria, he was awarded a medal, and this was the Order of the Medjidi, the fifth class, to recognize his efforts in treating the cholera patients. In 1867, he returned to Aberdeenshire and he worked as an acting medical superintendent at the Banff District Lunatic Asylum. In 1868, we have some records that Dr. Granby was giving talks about Egyptology. We can see here that there is in the newspaper that in March 1868, Dr. Grant was giving a talk in Woodside Parish Church here in Aberdeen, and you can see a picture of the church on the right. And the paper mentioned that he also had some very rare relics with him. So these talks were illustrated talks. It also means that he already started collecting at that time. He was interested even after spending a short time in Egypt, which also really explain why he went back. Um, in shortly after this talk, actually, in the same year, so in 1868, he went back to Egypt, and he decided that he would live there and work there. And he continued to collect, and also continued to work as a physician as well. There was many different times when cholera hit Egypt, usually starting from the ports, from Alexandria, and then affecting all the country. And in 1883, Dr. Grant wrote to the British Medical Journal, which he usually published in this particular journal, and he said at Bulak, and this is where he used to live. This is a district in Cairo. He said, I went from house to house visiting the cholera cases and giving the medicine, of which I had always a good supply in my carriage, with my own hands. The poor natives would crowd around my carriage, some with choleric children in their arms, others to take medicines for those sick in their houses, which were too far away for me to visit. Their demands were listened to and, as far as possible, attended to in the midst of those howling the death wail for their departed friends. It's really a bleak image of the situation in Egypt at that time. Here is a picture of Dr. Grant that was taken in Cairo in 1890, just after his second marriage to his wife Florence, who was from Liverpool. Uh, and you can see him here standing wearing all his medals, which was later donated by his family to the collection. And you can see here all his medals in a box on the left. Uh, Regarding his connection with Petrie, we have here an extract from Petrie's diary. So Petrie visited Egypt in 1880 for the first time, and the first thing that he did after he dropped his bags in the hotel is to go and visit Dr. Grant. And we have Petrie's diaries transcribed and published thanks to the Griffith Institute. So Petrie wrote, I went to Dr. Grant's and sent in my card, writing on it that I should be glad to see him about Sidney Hall's apparatus. He was just going out with another doctor to a consultation, and he had clean forgotten Sidney Hall's name, much more the apparatus. As soon as I said that it was for pyramid measures, he lighted up immediately, clapped me on the shoulder, and asked me to come to lunch at 1 tomorrow and talk over matters. I thanked him much, and he said, perhaps we could go over there for a night. So I said, I hope to settle there for some months, which he seemed much pleased with, and said, then we shall have not one talk or two, but several. And this was really a part of a long-term connection with Petrie. Dr. Grant introduced Ali Gabri to him, and Ali Gabri became one of the most important people that Petrie used as an assistant, and he relied on him. And Gabri worked with Petrie all over Egypt. Um, Granby kindly donated different casts to the collection and started with a collection of casts that appeared in the catalogue in 1887, and it's under a most notable valuable and notable group is that of the Egyptian antiquities represented by the cast, which have been generously sent to the museum by Dr. Granby of Cairo. And you can see one of these casts here on display in Sir Duncan Rice Library in the gallery there during one of our exhibitions there. Dr. Grant died in Bridge of Allen in Stirlingshire in 1896. After a short illness that started sometime in Cairo, and then he went to Germany, and then he went to Bridge of Allen. And he was buried in the Metlick Parish Church in the graveyard, and of course he has an obelisk over his grave. and we have all the information inscribed on his gravestone. He donated his collection to the university. So in 1897, we have here information in the role of graduates about Dr. Graham Bay. He was described as an Egyptologist and also says that the archaeological museum in the university contains as its principal feature his valuable collection of Egyptian antiquities presented by his widow in 1897. In 1938, Florence Grant, his widow, she donated a second installment of the collection, or what Dr. Grant called his museum. So this was a second installment of Dr. Grant's museum arriving to the collection. In 1946, Graham Bay's daughter donated a further installment of his collection, and we can see a stonemason's rule from the Pyramid of Cheops at the top of the list. This was recorded as a stonemason's rule, exactly as in the previous list, in fragments, and it says here left in ventilation shaft at the Great Pyramid of Cheops, 4000 BC. And at the bottom, it also mentioned that it disintegrated on exposure to the air. Collection review and the rehousing of the Asia collection, and this took place around 2018. We looked at the collection from East Asia, and you can see here my colleague Christina and Hannah working with objects from the collection. And collection review are absolutely crucial and really essential within museums. We will be able to identify objects that has a significant importance. We can also identify objects that would feature in exhibitions, and we'll also be able to record, take measurements, and update information on our database regarding each object. And it really involves literally working with every box on the shelf and exploring the contents of each box, and also working with archival material that we have regarding each of the objects as well. So working on the collection review with the East Asia collection, we came across this box which had an old number, and this number did not correspond to any entries on the East Asia collection. However, due to the nature of the decoration on the top of the box, I thought maybe it belonged to the Egyptian collection because the crescent and the star is part of the old Egyptian flag. Looking at the number in the Egyptian collection, it corresponded to the Mason's rule, and I knew that this object has been misplaced in the collection. I know that curators were looking for it for many years, probably since around 2000 or 2001. I'm also aware that a lot of researchers also really want to look at this object and examine it. The next step after actually finding the box was to do some examination and some analysis. So one of the fragments was selected for carbon-14 dating, which was carried out by the Scottish University's Environmental Research Centre in East Kilbride, and the calibrated date for the sample at 95.4% probability is the range of 3,341 to 3,094 BC. And you can see here a picture of the lab in East Kilbride on the right-hand side. And the results of this analysis is part of a publication that is going to be published soon. The news, of course, was after the press release, it was in every media you can imagine. We had the BBC, we had the local news, the Evening Express, and it was all over the world, I have to say. So the CNN, you can see here, we were featured, and also in Channel 4. From the BBC website, there were over 850,000 hits by the end of the week. This was December 2020. And it was by far the most read story on the Scottish section of the BBC that day. We had over 117,000 views of the short video on the university YouTube page or YouTube channel. And not just in English, but also in Arabic. The news on the bottom left is from the front page of the Ahram newspaper, which is a newspaper that I used to read when I was in Egypt. And there was also different Arabic media that got in touch and reported the find as well. And to our delight, the Have I Got News for You tweeted about the find. They said after a lost artifact from the Great Pyramid of Giza is discovered in a cigar box in Aberdeen, experts suggest 2020 may finally be running out of ideas. And the list on the left is just all the sort of media interaction that we had. This has all been published all over the media all over the world. And this is all from me. I would like to thank Anita Bucknell for providing copies of archival material, in particular documents and photographs that I haven't seen before and were not available for previous researchers. The research about Grand Bay is still in progress, and I might be able to come back and talk about it later. I would like to also thank my colleagues, in particular Neil Curtis and Caroline Dempsey, and Ray Kidd for all the help and support during this research. And I would like to thank you all for listening to my talk and invite you to visit our website and online exhibitions, to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and like our Facebook page. I look forward to all your questions at the Q&A session, and thank you very much.